Since the end of February, nearly 3 million Ukrainians have fled to neighboring Poland. In the country's capital of Warsaw, the population has grown roughly 20% after accepting more than 300,000 refugees. The mayor of the city says they are at capacity and losing millions of dollars, but bracing for another influx of refugees as Russia escalates the invasion into eastern Ukraine. And Mayor Rafal Trzaskowski joins us now here on the set in Washington. It's good to see you.
Good morning.
It's incredible. It's hard to really describe the numbers of people who have been welcomed onto Polish soil, up to 3 million in the course of, 3 to 4 months. For Warsaw, you say you are at capacity. Can you describe the situation? I'm trying to envision so many Polish people inviting Ukrainians into their homes.
Yes, the solidarity of the Polish people is just incredible. And if you're in Warsaw, you'll see that there are no pitched tents in parks or people in the streets because they're at people's apartments. They're at our homes. But of course, accepting 300,000 people in a month or
What's the population of Warsaw?
Almost 2 million. So the population of Warsaw increased by more than 15% in a month. Mm-hmm. And if you remember the Mediterranean crisis, we had 200,000 people coming to Europe in a month, and we had 300,000 coming to just one city. So, of course, it puts an enormous strain on the city services because we have granted Ukrainians a citizen-like status, access to free education, to free health care, to free social protection. So, of course, the services of the city are pretty strained. I'm just going to give you one example. We have 120 kids in Warsaw because most of those refugees are young women with kids.
Right.
And we've opened our schools for them, almost 20,000 kids already enrolled to Warsaw schools, but we cannot accept 120,000 kids overnight.
Right. And so that's the reality right now.
Indeed.
And what's happening with these children?
Well, I mean, most of them are simply doing an online learning on a Ukrainian platform, and we facilitate that. We've opened our centers where we provide computers for those kids, and we help them out, and we teach them Polish because many of them will probably stay for months or maybe longer.
And what are you hearing about how many more Ukrainian refugees may be coming your way?
And this is a real problem because we are at capacity, and of course, long term, we envisage quite a lot of problems, and it puts an enormous strain on the city. But I've just, 4 or 5 days, I've just talked to people coming from Donbas who are living there in a war zone for 7, 8 years, and they were saying, we are not going to move. But after what they've seen, what the Russian army have done, committed all of those atrocities around Kiev, they're now on the move. So we can envisage a second wave, and of course, 3 million refugees in one country, that's a hell of a lot.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible because you look at refugees coming to another country over a course of time, it might be 500,000, 1 million to Sweden over the course of a decade or something like that. And Sweden gets a medal for that, but 3 million in 3 months is a totally different story.
Of course.
Who pays for it? And should this just be Poland's problem?
That's why I'm here in the United States of America to talk to our friends that we need assistance. We need a relocation scheme because we need to share the burden. The Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom, and we need to do our bit. And of course, we are stepping up in Poland and in Warsaw, and we are going to help everyone who needs assistance. But we need help. My plea to the Biden administration and to my colleagues in Congress is that the assistance doesn't go only to the central government, because the relations of us with the central government are pretty strained, but that they go directly to refugees, to non-governmental organizations which are now saving the day, and of course also to local government.
No, there's going to be two big stories, and as the years go on, it's the lives of these refugees. Do they continue in Poland, and the reconstruction of Ukraine, which we can't even think about right now given where we are. But we are still expecting more than the 3 million who are already there, correct?
Exactly, because with the escalation in the east and with 7 million people displaced within Ukraine, we can expect another wave.
And Poles are just opening their homes, like there isn't any type of backlash internally?
Not yet.
Why?
But of course, because we know that Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom. We know that Russians are next door. And we have been warning the world for years. And I've been hearing that we are obsessed with Russia, that we do not really understand the geopolitical situation. Unfortunately, history proved us right. And that's a very bitter pill to swallow. But these guys are fighting for our values, for the transatlantic alliance. So that's why we need to help. And nobody is asking questions. But of course, as this crisis goes on and the city services are strained, because most of my psychologists work with refugees, most of my social services work with refugees, most of my teachers now help refugees, and so on and so forth. Of course, then we might expect a bit of a backlash. That's why we need assistance. That's why we need to share the burden so that we're ready to help for much longer than just a few months, because this conflict is not going to go away tomorrow. And of course, you've seen those cities in Ukraine. They're completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And we in Warsaw, we know what it means when a city is actually destined to be leveled to the ground, because that's what Hitler did to Warsaw. And we've rose like a phoenix from the ashes. So when we see Mariupol, when we see Kharkiv, we know it from history. That's why we want to help. That's why the solidarity is there.
Shared history. Willie Geist in New York has a question for you, Mr.
Mayor, good morning. Obviously, among this influx of refugees are many, many children. 200,000 kids are in Polish schools now. Ukrainian kids are in Polish schools, with an estimated 500,000 more inside Poland, but not yet in the schools. So you could have to absorb those children as well. Is there a long-term plan for kids? Because given the destruction in Ukraine, they're not going to be able to go home anytime soon. They may be in cities like Warsaw for some time. How do you absorb them, and how do you give them a good educational experience for as long as they're there?
That is a very good question, and we need a strategy. What you've seen so far in Poland is based mostly on improvisation, and that's why I made a plea to the central government, but also to the European Union and to our American friends and to the United Nations, that we need to build a strategy, a long-term educational strategy, because otherwise we're not going to be able to cope. And of course, some of the kids who speak a bit of Polish entered our schools already, but we need to provide an IT platform for the rest of them so that they can continue their education in Ukrainian. And we will be teaching them Polish, but we need additional teachers, we need money, we need infrastructure, and so on and so forth. But there's always, the sign of hope, because more than 100 kids, Ukrainian kids, were already born in Warsaw's hospitals. So you can see that even in a tragedy, there is a sign of hope. But we need assistance, that's for sure.